And as I will hear that we want to build a Caribbean MTV on the web. People are going to be able to come to our website and watch Sean Paul's new music videos instead of waiting for it to make it on TRL, right? We don't need to be on our countdown.
I got you.
Simple.
Peter Saddington, your big game hunter. And guys, we have our sights on someone special today.
Only a mother could invest in
this idea.
Made this like super artistic.
That is actually absolutely correct. And that's a very, very astute assessment, actually.
True startup story, guys. You got it. Your company just got seed round financed. Congratulations. You're going to the moon. But now you have to scale. You found great talent out in California, New York, Georgia, and even Eastern Europe. So what communications platform will you be using to ensure your international team is always aligned? Well, the answer is easy. Slack.com for Teams. We've used Slack for all of our previous startups, and they've supported us in tremendous ways. And we want to give them a thanks today for supporting vchunting.com. Did you also know that Slack is a great tool for personal use? Yeah, I use my own personal Slack channel to drop in documents, notes, to-dos, and follow-ups to ensure that my workflow throughout the day is right on course. I promise you, if you try out slack.com for personal use, you'll end up using it for your team as well. Go to slack.com to check it out. Welcome everybody to another episode of VC Hunting with me, Peter Saddington. You guys know we are out on the hunt for great, unique, untold stories of venture capitalists. And today, guys, I have a great guest. It's David Mullings, CEO and founder of Blue MAHOE Capital, which focuses on long-term investments in the Caribbean with a hub in Jamaica. It's great to have you, David. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Peter. Looking forward to talking.
Man, so David and I have actually been kind of ping-ponging ideas back and forth for a while now, and I connected with him on Twitter. And one of the things that I really appreciated about David Mullings is his willingness and transparency to send me, first and foremost, his 50-year plan or his 50-year-old plan for his life. Now, we're going to get into that a little bit, but I just love just the candor, honesty, and transparency of David online, and that's one of the reasons why we reached out. But let's just jump right in. Let's get a little bit of the story, David, because you have an interesting checkered colored story of sorts as I've done some research. Which, by the way, happy birthday, by the way, January 12th, I believe.
Thank you.
See, look at that.
Thank you. Yes, that's right.
Look at that. Remember, even the birthday.
I love you so much.
So tell us, David, how did you get into investing, and tell us how did you come to where you are today?
Wow. So the shortest version of the story I could come up with for this is, I grew up between Kingston, Jamaica and Miami, Florida. My mom was a nurse at Jackson Memorial. And at 14 years old, I was in high school in Jamaica. And that's when I first learned to code. Built my first database, wrote the software, and then graduated high school at 15. Came straight to the US, went to college. And a close friend of mine, we consider each other cousins, Richard Powell, ended up at Harvard. He was a year ahead of me in high school and came second in a startup competition and got his first VC funding. And so that was my introduction to the world of what is VC, early stage investing. And we got to follow his path. They moved to Silicon Valley on the floor above Yahoo. And he was on the cover of Inc. magazine. And I'm thinking, man, I've known this guy since I was born. If he can do it, definitely I should be looking at this. And so what Richard did is ended up going into the private equity world. My brother and I then started our MBAs in 2001 at University of Miami. And we had a class that said we need to pitch a business idea to the class. And we pitched an idea for this platform. One hand went up and said, I'd invest $10,000. And we said, wow, I guess we have something. I went back to mom and dad and they said, no, don't take the money. You don't know if it's a good fit from this investor. You just met them. We will give you the money. And they didn't write a check. They forced us to take some part-time jobs. And what they did though, right? So they want us to not spend the money like we just got it and we didn't earn it.
Hustle. They wanted you to earn it.
We had to hustle, but they took on our living expenses up to a certain amount. And that got us going. And we launched a platform February 2002, Real Vibes. And it became the largest platform for Caribbean music videos on the web. So this is 2002. We're trying to do video on the web. YouTube doesn't come out till 2005. And that was the real introduction. So I called Richard and said, you have tech experience, you've raised money, can you be our chairman? He wrote our first bigger check. And he said to us, he's like, you have like a 90% chance of failing at this, especially trying to raise money. And we were trying to raise out of the Caribbean and in the US, this is a small market. Odds are you're going to fail, but use this opportunity to learn about investing, go and study some Warren Buffett, learn about scaling companies, and you should become investors instead if it fails. And so that's really how the transition worked. I ended up working in the finance industry in Jamaica, and then Richard had an exit with one of his private equity deals and moved me back to the States, into Orlando, to work with him at his private equity firm, lower middle market. And I love the private equity space, but my problem is, as a Jamaican, when I was trying to raise money in the Caribbean, those investors just aren't seed stage investors. I wanted to fill that gap, and so that's what MAHOE Capital wants to do, is to help fill that gap where we have a lack of risk capital at the early stage. And I don't want another generation to go through what I went through, trying to raise money and nobody's willing to be that first check or first two checks.
Wow. Well, there's so much there to unpack. And one of the things I want to talk about immediately before I jump into the past here is, I mean, is there really, I wouldn't know. I got a beginner's mindset here. Is there really a big gap when it comes to early stage investing in the Caribbean and Jamaica? Is there no one else, or is it just kind of you?
So, well, no, so there are definitely some small groups, and we even have two angel investor groups. We have the Branson Center of Entrepreneurship Caribbean is based in Jamaica, but at the same time, they're still more focused on scale-ups. We don't really have seed stage investors. And the reason is we don't have the same ecosystem. And you have to think about the investors, right? Angel investors in the US, especially Silicon Valley, have been founders in most cases, or were early working within a startup. So they've been through that ecosystem, and they understand it's not just up and to the right. Like it's going to be pretty much a nightmare for the first 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, and then they decide to pay it forward. In the Caribbean, we pretty much only have two sources of capital. We have wealthy families who've inherited the company from their parents, so they didn't go through that struggle. So they think it's up and to the right with all this amazing governance. Or they've made their money doing traditional things, doctor, lawyer, and they've been able to get, in Jamaica, for example, you were able to buy government bonds and get 14% a year. 14, without trying. You just, like, it was crazy.
That's like printing money.
It's like, when that's what the government was doing. They were printing money. and so now that interest rates have normalized and come down to very low single digits like the rest of the world, these investors are now hunting for yield. The first thing they do is they dive into the stock market and then dive into real estate. They are still not looking for early stage. And so if we don't have more of us who have gone abroad, have raised capital abroad, have spent more time in a developed market like the US, then we're going to have some issues with that risk capital.
Well, that's what I find, what that makes a lot of sense to me in a lot of ways, because from what I understand, that in the world, I think up to 2018, that Jamaica had one of the best performing stock markets on the planet. And so it makes sense that any type of well-endowed individual, when it comes to money, would move towards that, because historically Jamaica's had such great returns and yields from the Jamaican stock market. So that makes a lot of sense. But I want to speak on, I want to give some props to your family and to your parents. I mean, the wherewithal and the maturity they had to tell you, hey, wait, don't take money from this one guy. And you know, you're going to take money from us, but at the same time, you're going to earn it, brother. You know, I mean, what type of growing up did you have with your parents, and what did they teach you about finances when you were young?
Wow. So I'm glad you're giving them props. So dad is a medical doctor, mom is a nurse, but dad comes from a very entrepreneurial family. His mom ran a store in Montego Bay. And for the Stuart who owned sandals and beaches used to sell to my grandmother's store. And dad's, and grandpa was an insurance salesman. So he was all about sales and protection, risk, reward analysis kind of thing. So dad raised us to understand that money is not just for yourself. If you can create wealth, you need to pay it forward. We were raised in the church, so we believed in charitable giving as well. And my parents made sure that even though I grew up very well to do in Kingston, I constantly spend time back in their areas where they grew up in rural parts of Jamaica. Mom used to walk 7 miles to the nearest bus stop to then go to school, and she had one pair of shoes. Dad had to wake up at 4 in the morning and milk the cows. So I got to spend that time, and they wanted me to understand the value of what they were giving us and the value of a dollar. So when I was finishing high school at 15, and Dad asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And my answer was, I want to be a positive role model for young people around the world, especially young males in the Caribbean. And so Dad said, oh, wow, that's a bit surprising. That's not what we were expecting you to say. But knowing you have a plan. And so we laid out the plan, what the 4 options were. The remaining 2 was become a superstar soccer player and use it for good. Or I could then become an entrepreneur and business owner and invest in film and music that could influence the way people thought. And so Dad said those aren't mutually exclusive. That means you need to learn more about business. So every summer and every Christmas since I was 15, I had to present a business idea where my parents could invest 10 grand, including 5-year projections. And they helped buy those books for me to go and read it. And they said no for pretty much 5 years until that first semester of the MBA.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. Well, so there was 3, essentially, if I can qualify it, there were essentially 3 trajectories for you: music, soccer, and business. Clearly, the first 2 didn't really pan out.
I was playing soccer for a while.
Well, we're going to get to that because you're always lamenting how, on Twitter, how bad these teams are doing. So we're going to get into that in a second. But I really, you brought it up, and I'm surprised you brought it up. Usually I like to bring up these things because we do digging here on VC Hunting. I was going to ask you about what happened to Random Media. LLC and Real Vibes TV YouTube channel, because I did some digging, and that was actually kind of before its time in a lot of ways.
Well, so that's exactly what it is. We were too early. But I can tell you what happened. So Random Media was a company we created, and we wanted to name the platform separately. And how we came up with the name, this was Christmas 2001. I have the pitch to Dad. We now had someone that wanted to give us 10 grand. He says no. And I was like, well, we want to build a Caribbean MTV on the web. People are going to be able to come to our website and watch Sean Paul's new music videos instead of waiting for it to make it on TRL, right? We don't need to be on our countdown.
I got you.
Simple. So we taught ourselves how to code. We taught ourselves Photoshop. We had to learn to encode videos at 56K up to 300K. A nightmare at that point in time. And edit the videos. I had to do the interviews. And we said, here's the 5 things. And we said eventually 6, because I'm a nerd and carbon has 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons. Here's the 6 things we want the business to connect to. And I looked at MTV, and Dad said, oh, why so random? I was like, oh, that's the name of the company. So we named it Random Media.
Okay.
And then we needed to name the website. And Dad said, well, I don't know what you're going to call this website, but every time you guys go to parties, you're on top of the speaker boxes and you just bring the real vibes. So we named it Real Vibes. So we launch a website, we get to go on tour with Sean Paul, we go on tour with TOK, we strike a deal with Mundus's TVs. They have a show called The Roof, and Fridays is Reggae Fridays. And we think we're going to now get users. The whole point is to get users, which then gets us attention, which then gets us investors as users first. Don't worry about, profit.
Right.
Big mistake there. So we ended up being extras in the movie Too Fast, Too Furious, and John Singleton allowed us to take a ton of pictures, about 120 pictures. I approached IGN.com and said, hey, we've got these photos. We'll give them to you. I just linked back to the site. And IGN says, no, we'll post 3 pictures and send everybody else to your website to look at the pictures. Hopefully they'll stay and watch your videos.
Okay.
Well, within 2 months, we ended up having like 1.5 million unique visitors. We went way over bandwidth. I mean, we had $10,000 in bandwidth overage charges when we were paying $180 a month for 1 terabyte. So we had to shut it down. We had to shut it down for 6 months. We had literal depression. Mom had to come by and bring pizza and open the curtains because we didn't raise the money. So we decided that we needed to be smart about what we do. So we shut down the video part of the website, renamed Random Media LLC to Real Vibes Group LLC. It still exists today, still registered here in Florida. And we set up a film company in Jamaica with a close friend of ours from high school, Kyle Heitel. So it's called Real Vibes Studios Limited, based in Jamaica. Shoot some original content. And he's doing pre-production right now for a short film that he won a grant for. So we still have Real Vibes alive in some way. I know we have some people asking us to bring it back, so we have a surprise to announce in about 3 months.
Wow.
But we've been asked to do merchandise for some of these artists since we do have some relationships. So it will come back.
That's really a unique story. I mean, there's lots of lessons to extract from there, but probably the most is just perseverance and continuing to grind and continuing to go, even despite like the success, but the success was kind of the beginning of the failure because you didn't know how to handle it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And YouTube had come out, and I remember we got into a discussion with my brother and myself, and that is the mediator, right? And my brother wants to try and compete with YouTube and allow user-generated content to be uploaded to our side. And I was just like, I would rather partner with them. And so we ended up negotiating a deal with YouTube to become their first Caribbean media partner. We could earn revenue from our channel. And I got the ability to approve other people's channels. So the Jamaica Tourist Board had to go through me to get their channel approved. So it was great though that instead of competing, we said let's find a way to layer on top of these guys. And then there was a company called imeme.com that reached out to us as well. Imeme at that time was doing audio on the web and video. They started to power the website. MTV's Flux signed on as a backend for you to log in, so you could set up a user account on Real Vibes and log in on the MTV websites with the same username and password. So we started to build alliances instead, and it was a lot of fun, but it really drained our resources. But it taught us so much more than even the MBA. I mean, an MBA teaches how to manage an existing business, not to start and scale a business.
Right.
So I'm glad that we got both worlds.
Did you know that there's even more value than just audio or video? Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at VC Hunting, and make sure to sign up for the VC Hunting newsletter, where you'll be able to get weekly news on venture capital, startups, founder stories, and the occasional wisdom extracted from Peter's brain. Go to vchunting.com to sign up. And now back to the episode.
That's awesome. That's excellent. So, there's so much here that I want to talk about. We did some digging, and this is one relatively recent, but in February 26, 2019, you wrote a really interesting article that I think is worth talking about here. In February 26, 2019, you wrote an article on debunking #hustle porn. So tell us, what is that? For not everyone out there, I don't believe, knows what that is. So first off, tell us what is #hustle porn, and what is the value of debunking it? Why is that important?
So I don't even remember the name of the guy that came up with the tag. So we have to Google who came up with hustle porn. But I agree with his sentiment. And I wrote that while I was in bed at home because I just had emergency surgery February 5th. And so I had a lot of time. I had 10 days in the hospital, 6 weeks at home to just think about how did I get here? And the doctor kept talking about, why would you do this to yourself last year in all of 2018? And I said, I'm young, I'm burning the candle at both ends. I need to have multiple streams of income. I need to work on all these projects and create this wealth. And this is what everybody on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram are talking about. Like, look at Elon Musk and all these guys, they work so hard. Hustle porn is this idea that you need to hustle and you need to have 6-7 streams of income because that's what the wealthy people have. And I think that we have this get-rich-quick mentality now, this MTV mentality, cribs, and everything needs to happen fast, short attention spans, instead of realizing that you have to work smart and work hard. And that wealth creation tends to come from focusing on one or two things and becoming really good, right? Not jack of all trades, master of none, but focusing, becoming really good, and then creating wealth. And afterwards, the preservation of wealth by having multiple streams. So hustle porn, I think when you say, team don't sleep, that's crazy. You have one body. Warren Buffett says it over and over. If you treat your body as the one car that you can never replace, you would actually make sure you get sleep, you would eat right, you would exercise, and you would not burn the candle at both ends.
So that was, the blog post was an outcome or an outpouring of you going through burnout, essentially. Yes,
major burnout. I thought I was doing it right up to age 38, right? Everybody was like, man, you're traveling, you're speaking, you're doing this, and I'm everywhere. And then I get rushed to the hospital and we have to do emergency surgery. I mean, this is call your wife, call the executive of your estate. This is going to be 1 year of recovery. So my final visit to the doctor is March, is in 2 months. And so far, everything is great. We're back to almost 100%. But I mean, to be told that you have a high chance of not waking up and you still have 1 year of recovery, you will not be able to play any contact sports, so no soccer. Like, oh my gosh. And I had to just understand, like,
that's why you're sitting on the bench yelling on Twitter.
Yelling on Twitter because I can't play. I want to play. I'm now the coach instead. But that's what it was. It was extreme burnout. This wasn't just minor burnout. This was extreme. And being in that hospital and realizing that the world didn't collapse when I actually got rest. And I got time to think and clear my head. And I could realize that this project was sapping too much energy, or this was a distraction from what we actually were supposed to be doing. We forgot what the mission was in terms of what problem we wanted to solve, and we got focused on, we need to generate some money, I need to make more money, I need to create wealth. And we went off on a tangent. And I feel like the universe took a Steve Jobs and threw a brick at my head.
Well, sometimes that's what you need for a reset. And so I'm taking kind of an assumption here. I'm assuming that you kind of built up to this lifestyle of burning the candle at both ends. It doesn't seem, well, you correct me if I'm wrong. Was it always your personality to kind of?
No.
Okay.
I was a real vibes carefree guy. I was never, and so, you know, I'm one of those smart kids in school where I didn't have to study as long as everybody else. I have photographic memory. So for me, it was never work super hard. It was like, no, I can just be smart. And what do
you think triggered over time this need to grind and burn the candle both ends? If I can
easy.
Okay, tell us.
Easy. So when you start looking at everybody else, so you're going on Facebook, you're going on Twitter, you see all your classmates, and in some cases, they tell you you're smarter than them, and you see them achieving so much more, and you're wondering, well, I'm 35, I'm 31, I'm 38. How is it that I am not here as yet? All these other people are looking up to me. And then you start having this imposter syndrome issue. And then, you know, we talk about impression management. I need to get this success ASAP. What are the ways to do it? And instead of focusing on one thing, we basically throw everything against the wall. We want to see which one sticks. And that's exactly what happened. I started looking at all the Joneses instead of focusing on my race.
I love it. And I love the fact that you're willing to bring that up, because I think so many people out there, especially we have a lot of entrepreneurs, we have a lot of founders, what I call the entre-pro curious. Those are interested in the hustle, interested in starting a new grind or a startup. I think it's so great that you're talking about this, because when it comes to the world of social, it's so easy to get caught up in comparing yourself to other people and looking at, I mean, there's 9,000 things that you can compare yourself to. Yes. And especially for me, as you know, I'm assuming you and I are closer to 40 than anything else.
Yes.
Right. And so like, you're looking at other people and you're like, well, I'm like 40 and he's like 32 or she's like 33. You're like, what am I doing with life? I get it. I appreciate you bringing up this whole idea of imposter syndrome. Now, I don't think everyone out there has heard of that. So tell us, what does that mean? What does that mean? And how did that affect you?
So I think the world used to be this whole fake it till you make it 1980s, 1990s thing, right? Dress for the job you want, not the job you have.
Right.
And then we're in a different era now, though, where we should be more transparent. We need to be more authentic. And people can call BS much, much faster. We are more educated, and Google exists. And so imposter syndrome is where you are working on something, whether you're a 9-to-5 and you're a doctor or a lawyer, or you have your own startup, and you feel that you don't deserve the credit or the accolades that you're getting, right? So I think a lot of us suffer from that. But for a while, at first it starts off feeling, I deserve to be here. I like this. I just impacted this person. I did this surgery, it went well. And then you start getting some recognition, and then it's just like, I don't think I deserve this recognition yet. I am not here, so I don't deserve that. And then you start to worry because you continue to be out there. You're talking, you're speaking, you're sharing your stories, you're inspiring other people. And then the weight of the world starts to fall on your shoulders. I was like, man, I don't think I deserve this anymore. Maybe I shouldn't be dressing up in this suit and tie.
Yeah, and for me, I've struggled with that in the past, and I'll say for me, how it manifested itself is, what if people actually found out what you really don't know? And, and for me, one of the ways to kind of alleviate that was to continue just to interview people and help the world know that I really don't know a lot, because there are so many people out there with so many different perspectives and ideas, and they pour into me. And it was a great way for me to figure out and to say, hey, look, you don't have all your shit together. That's okay.
That's okay.
It's okay. Right.
No, but that's great. I love that. So I think each of us has our own way of therapy. Like, I think that's your therapeutic approach. And so mine, I'm interviewing some people, as you can see, not as many as you, but I've spent a lot more time speaking to extremely successful people,
yes.
Mainly my mentor. So,
perfect segue. You recently were on a big magazine. I wanted to bring that up because I wanted to market this, but you're a big cover of the magazine with another I'm not going to say his name. I'll let you do the introduction with a very successful entrepreneur. Tell us, what was that experience like?
Right. So this is Michael Leachin, one of the few black billionaires in the world. Mike is worth over $2.5 billion.
Him and Jay-Z.
Him and Jay-Z, right? Jamaican, Canadian, and immigrant from Jamaica, went to Canada, got into mutual funds, and then started doing private equity as well. And I've known Mike now for 7 years, but never really asked him for super deep advice. Got a little advice, but never tried to ping him every month or every quarter, or how can I help you, Mike? Studied him. He says, find a role model, get the recipe, don't change the recipe. Right. And early June, we were still working on what would Blue MAHOE Capital look like. And my wife said to me, she obviously knows what the bank account looks like. She's working as a teacher. She's like, man, the end of this month, David, like, what's happening? What's happening? You need to make this work. And I said, that was when I was driving to Miami, and I made a phone call. I was like, I need a meeting with Mike. I just need 1 hour's time. Now I need to make the phone call. And I had the meeting the following week. We sat down for an hour. 15 minutes to discuss business, 45 minutes to discuss life and what comes next. And Mike just kept saying, I want to position Blue MAHOE Capital as the vehicle for people in the US to invest back into the Caribbean, mainly Jamaica. What do you need from me? And I started asking for the basic stuff. I was like, well, let people know I know you, you know me, help me with our investment strategy, give me some advice. And he says, done. What else? I'm like, I don't get this. And he's like, well, we could do like a video together. And so we shot the video the Thursday. He's like, what else, David? I was like, man, this is, at this rate, this is crazy. I'm going to eventually ask you for some money. He said, finally, talk to so and so. But, and he said, what else? And we got into serious discussions. And that's when we talked about doing an article that could get more people to learn about Jamaica. When we did the article together, the magazine publisher said, wow, this was really good. Do you think Mike can be on the cover with you? It was originally just me. So I messaged Mike. We talk once a week now, and he's constantly checking in and helping. And he says, oh, I'll be on the cover with you. I was like, wow, Mike, you did Black Enterprise cover by yourself. You've never done a magazine cover with anybody else. Why me? Right. And Mike is like, well, I've met your dad. I've spent time with you. People Google you, and they're going to say, good story, but maybe not ready just yet. And so I won't get some of these meetings that I have access to people. He says, if I'm on the cover with you, they're going to say, well, if Mike is endorsing him and helping, I probably should take this meeting. Mike is worth a lot more than me. Let me take this meeting with David. And then Mike said to me, and we're both born in January. We're 30 years apart. He's January 1951. I'm January 1981. And Mike said, I want people to say that we need more David Mullingses, and David followed Mike's plan. And that has blown away. And wow. But it came from an ask. Just closed mouths don't get fed is what they keep saying. And I was afraid to ask Mike because he might say no. And he said yes to everything I've asked instead.
I love it. Closed mouths. I'm writing it down. Closed mouths.
Closed mouths don't get fed.
It's interesting because I was just talking about that on one of my Venture Daily shows about the value of asking, and asking is always free. I mean, to find someone like Michael Leachin and a billionaire, ridiculously successful. I mean, coming down from the clouds, helping normies like you and I.
Yeah.
it's not something that usual. And so having that relationship and asking and continuing to ask, I mean, that's a powerful lesson that we can extract here, right?
Yeah, no, we can. And when you just put aside your ego, I think it really comes. At first I don't want Mike to know the troubles that I'm going through. I'm managing the impression he has of me. And eventually you need to just recognize that, man, I am the emperor with no clothes. I am naked and I need help. So just put it aside and ask. The worst that he could say is no, I am no better off. And I mean, this is someone that said yes. He sent me a 90-page document of his investment philosophy. He said, here's homework. Study it this weekend. We're talking next week. And the other day I gave him an update. He just asked, so what's happening with your exchange traded fund plan? And I said, we're running into this custodian problem. And he immediately texts the contact for his CFO. He's like, here's my CFO in Canada. Give him a call. He's going to help you. And we called the guy a few days later, and he's like, yes, Mr. Mullings, Mr. Leachin said you were going to be calling. I was like, no, I'm David. Don't call me Mr. Mullings. You guys are the big guys. Is amazing. So I think it's a good lesson.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a great lesson, a great example for everyone out there that asking is always free, and you never know what they're going to say. They could say no. That's fine. You'll learn something from that. But if they say yes, you could be embarking on a really powerful journey. Yeah.
Yeah, very true. Your life can change, and it's been fascinating. And then specifically asking Mike, I said, well, what do I do next? And Mike said, whatever you were thinking of doing, you need to 100 exit. 100. And I was like, wow. He's like, you used to write columns in the newspaper every Sunday in Jamaica about politics and economic development. You spoke all over the place and you stopped. You need to get back out there. And I said, wow, Mike, well, how do I deal with the pressure that comes from being so public, right? The negativity. We're going to get haters out there. But then how do I make sure it doesn't inflate my head? I've had that before where, the ego starts growing and the head gets big. And Mike gave me some really good advice. He said, first of all, be public about your failures. People need to be able to Google your failures and you talk about the lessons you got from the failures. Don't hide the failures. Talk about the lessons. So that's number one. But the number two is always remember what you're doing and why you're doing it. Focus on that. Don't worry about what everybody else is saying. Just focus on why you are doing this thing, and then remember who you are. And so that has been helpful. And it's just like, say what you want to say. Whether it's good or bad, I'm going to just try and stay on this even keel. And then lastly, obviously, he says, keep people around you who've known you longer that can remind you of where you're actually coming from. And the more you talk about it with them or publicly, it's going to keep reminding you, oh yeah, I remember that failure. Because if you don't talk about the hard times, the car being repossessed or the bank account being overdraft, you completely forget what that world is like. And you get caught up in the lofty clouds.
Exactly. And what is so interesting is as I was doing research, the Twitter posts that I wanted to bring up today, two of them were kind of have a negative, not a negative context, but they have well, let me just read them. Let me just go through them. Let me just jump into it. It's a perfect segue to this. It's revealing the real you. It's revealing who you are, your failures. And let's just get into it. In December 29th, 2008. So we're going way back here.
Yeah.
December 29th. This is actually one of your first Twitter posts on Twitter, December 29th, 2008. You said, quote, dealing with disappointment is harder than dealing with failure. Entrepreneurs expect failure, but not necessarily disappointment. And so my question is it because disappointment is a mental emotion, whereas failure is something that just happens to you? Why is it that dealing with disappointment is harder than dealing with failure to you, David?
Well, so for me, it's because I think as an entrepreneur, you are convinced that I have a plan, I have a reason, a worthy fantasy to solve this problem. And as long as I do my best, it will work and other people will show up to support me.
Right.
And that's actually never what happens, but we aren't programmed for that when you're a first-time founder. So it's like, I'm going to shoot the shot and it doesn't score. You're supposed to score. I did everything they said. I did everything by the book.
Exactly.
And so you're disappointed.
And everyone's supposed to show up and cheer me on even though it didn't make it.
Yeah, exactly. You're supposed to be like, high five, you tried. I was like, no, that's actually not what happened. It's like, bro, what happened? Why did you fail? Why didn't it work? So I think we aren't set up as first-time founders. Nobody has taught us, unless you played sports, nobody has taught that you're going to actually fail a lot more than you succeed. And we usually don't translate the sports stuff into business either. So we just think, I can look at what how did YouTube get started, or Facebook, or Steve Jobs, all these people. I read the books, I studied, I got the right co-founder. We've now launched. So I think most of us don't actually learn how to deal with disappointment. And I think it's even worse if you're an overachiever like me, right? Where you graduate from high school at 15, I graduate from college at 19, everybody is calling you a little Einstein. You are extra convinced, man, I got this plan, this is going to work. I have never had to deal with failure except on a soccer field. That's it. I never had to deal with failure in my life in school. So I think it's even harder for us.
Well, 5 years later, you talked about that again, because I went through all the tweets. And on November 22nd, 2013, you said, life lesson. The people you least expect to disappoint you. Here's that word again. The people you least expect to disappoint you will do so someday. It will hurt. And this too shall pass. Hashtag entrepreneurship. What happened in 2013 where you had a life lesson where the people that you least expect to disappoint you, they did? What happened there, bro?
Wow. So without calling names, super close family friend, or almost a family member in my case, we had our previous company, Keystone Augusta. That was supposed to be our first investment firm, but it was taking Caribbean capital and investing in private equity in the US. We bought a mobile app development firm. And actually, it wasn't one I wanted to buy. It was way smaller than our investment strategy. But the board voted. I'm the CEO, so I followed suit, right? All hands on deck. And we completely blew it. Like, the guys during due diligence, they hid information from us. And the company ended up we were threatened with a lawsuit that would kill the business. And so we ended up having to fold. I mean, this is Chapter 7 type stuff. No money in the bank account. And we got a notice from the electricity company that your electricity is going to be cut off on a certain day. And this is, yes, it's Florida, but it still gets cold here, man. Like, it does get cold. So my wife and I have, he's about to be 1. Luke will turn 1 that January. So we have a less than 1-year-old in the house. And the person says, I'm going to put $500 in your account this morning so you can pay the bill and make sure electricity is good for at least the next month. And he never did it. And so our electricity was cut off that afternoon. And so that night, the day before the tweet, my wife and I had to huddle with our little baby on the comforters to keep him warm that night. And so the next day I called mom and dad to let them know what happened. And they came to the rescue. I mean, money showed up. Here's a life insurance policy that we kept away from you. You can borrow this number until you get back on your feet. And to this day, that person has not apologized. And in fact, the last time I brought it up, they said, well, that's in the past. Wow. So that's what happened, and that's what caused me to write that tweet.
Well, that still is a powerful story because of where you are today, right? I think it's always hard for entrepreneurs and founders and anyone in any type of tough situation to look beyond. But now that we're 7-8 years past that, it's like, it was just part of the story. It made you who you are. And it strengthens
exactly.
you in ways. I would go as far as to say being married, I mean, that's what makes your marriage relationship survive. I mean, if she can't handle you through your worst, if she can't stick with you through your worst, ain't no way she's gonna be hanging out with you in your best.
Exactly. No, it's true. And I think in order for you to become stronger or a better person, you have to face adversity. Like, just if you have it smooth for your entire life, the first time you trip, you're going to have a problem. We learn to ride a bicycle by getting on it and falling off. Like, nobody learns to ride just by, oh, brilliant, like I can ride all of a sudden. You need to keep falling and learning. And I remember talking to Dad during that whole time. I speak to Dad all the time. He's like my little guru. And when Luke, our first son, was starting to learn to walk, and I called Dad, I was like, man, I'm holding his hand. I'm trying to get him to walk. And he's like, no, don't hold his hand. He needs to get up and fall and pick himself up and fall. Like, you can't teach somebody to walk by walking for them. That doesn't help. His legs will never get strong enough if you keep holding him up. He needs to build the strength himself. And I think of these same failures in the same way. We had to build the strength ourselves. And there was an investor of mine, one of our largest investors. We can't use his name because he hates his name being called, but former CEO of a massive public company in the Caribbean. When we ran into this failure, I reached out and I knew he could write a check to save us. I was like, man, just $5,000 could help, $1,000 could help. And he literally said, David, I could write the check, but it's going to teach you the wrong lesson. When my family's business was failing and I had to leave college and help them scale back up, it made us so much better as business people. So I'm not going to write you the check. I'm going to stay in touch month by month. We're going to do a regular call, and you need to find your family members, like the ones who, like, man, if you get evicted, you're going to move in with mom and dad.
Right.
Call family first, get them to support you, and then tell me the lessons you learn, and then I can help you with other stuff. But you need to try and solve this problem yourself first. I can't be the guy that always just jumps up and saves the day. You need to learn how to save the day yourself. And this is going to make you a better entrepreneur. And obviously when he said it, it's like, really, man? but looking back, it's like, man, that was brilliant. I thank him so much for saying no, but staying in touch and making sure we're okay. It wasn't a mean no, but he was right. Resilience is critical.
That's kind of the wisdom of the ages, right? Beyond you, is that he knew that you needed to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and learn on your own. And, you know, you said it makes you a better entrepreneur, a better founder, but in reality, it just makes you a better man. It makes you a better human, right?
Yep,
Resilience.
that is true.
Resilience here.
Yep.
So I want to
it gives us empathy. It gives us empathy for other founders, which is why I want to be a very founder-friendly investor.
Oh yeah. I mean, one of the things that I'm excited about being ridiculously more empathetic towards founders too, because they just have the worth. I don't understand why. Let's go off on a topic here for a sec. I don't understand why there's so many people who want to be founders and entrepreneurs, because the life sucks. Like it sucks. Like, yeah. You say, oh, Peter, you know, I see you sitting here. You got your race car. It looks like everything's great. It's like, but you don't know the blood, the sweat, the tears, mostly the tears, and the curled up in the corner of the room, thinking that it's like the life is over. I'm gonna have to sell everything that I had achieved is gonna go away. My wife's like.
My wife is going to leave me. My kids are going to think I'm a failure.
Exactly. It's not something enviable. I want to ask you a couple questions here. But first and foremost, you and I had, again, emailed. We had some email chains back and forth, and you had said that you were interested in some exotic cars. Now, I'm a huge car guy. I had to bring this up before we cut off here. So what's the exotic car that you're thinking about buying? Because from my email, it seems like you're saying, hey, I'm looking into maybe getting an exotic car, but I'm not going to tell you yet. I'll wait for the interview. So what is it, bro? Tell me.
So I need to earn the money first, but the car that I would want to get it was called the Son of Valkyrie. The Aston Martin Valhalla is what I would want.
Aston Martin.
I love Aston Martins, but I'm a huge James Bond fan. The whole connection with Jamaica, all the books were written there. I think it would be awesome to have an Aston Martin, one of the limited edition Valhallas, and put a little Jamaica tribute to the car.
I love it.
Yeah.
Let's finish out with this final quote from you on Twitter. It's from January 22nd, 2020. So it's just a week ago, but it was such an encouraging tweet. You said this. You said people feed on your belief in what you're working on. If you don't sound confident about your plan, then they aren't going to be confident either. Believe in yourself first if you expect others to believe in you. Self-confidence is what matters. So tell me, what are you focusing on today at Blue MAHOE Capital? And what are you confident about as you move towards the future in 220?
So we want to solve a simple problem. We want to make it easier for us Jamaicans abroad to invest back into Jamaica and Caribbean Americans to invest back into the Caribbean. We're doing that by building a balance sheet of public and private equities in the Caribbean. And we intend to take Blue MAHOE Capital public on the NASDAQ. So we want to list our entity on the NASDAQ, similar to a Berkshire Hathaway. And then we are creating an impact fund that can do some of the earlier stage investing. So it's called the Island Forward Impact Fund. And I am very, very confident that we can find really good deals, support entrepreneurs in the Caribbean, especially around the sustainable development goals, and be the investors of choice for Caribbean entrepreneurs and business owners with the most founder-friendly terms that you can find.
I love it. From a guy who's done everything from music to soccer to trying to do his own startups and his parents telling him, nope, you got to earn it, bro. From having massive massive, failures in life, but coming back strong to eventually now not just recently, really sitting down and having lunch, coffee, hangout, interviews with a billionaire. So guys, if David Mullings can do it, let's be honest, you can too. Everyone out there, thanks so much for this opportunity. David, I'm going to give you the final word. Where can people learn more about you and make sure that they are on track with your story and what's going on?
Well, the easiest thing is davidmullings.com, Mullings, and I'm all over Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn.
Awesome. Guys, well, thank you so much again, David. This has been a blessing of a conversation, a life-giving conversation for me, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks again for having me, Peter. I loved it.
True startup story time. Guys, as a founder, I'm often asked, what are my go-to tools and technology that I use as I begin a startup? Well, that's easy. One of them is Dropbox. Dropbox is the easiest way to ensure that all your files and documents are synced on all devices, whether it be mobile, your local desktop, or remote. We want to thank Dropbox for supporting vchunting.com, and make sure to get your 30-day trial free at dropbox.com/business. Well, wasn't that an awesome, encouraging interview with David Mullings from Blue MAHOE Capital, down in Florida, but representing Jamaica and the Caribbean. We had a great conversation after our interview, and I just loved his energy. I loved his candor. He even said, hey man, it's just, there's a lot of people that probably have never even heard of those stories. I can't believe you brought up those old tweets, and you've been tweeting since 2008, 2013. This is one of the things that I enjoy so much about the work that I do, and interviewing other people, interviewing other venture capitalists, interviewing other founders and entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneur curious, people who are living their dreams and hustling, and more importantly, not afraid to discuss the past, not afraid to discuss what they've gone through. David Mullings is a great example of a man who's been through so much. High highs, the low lows, a man who through his education wasn't really challenged because things kind of came natural for him. The only major failings he had was on the soccer field, which, let's be honest, those failings don't really amount to a whole lot in terms of the larger meta of life. And then coming in to the real world, having to build his own businesses, having had successes and failures, going through depression, having to borrow money from his family, his parents, his friends. Guys, ain't this the hustle? Aren't these stories worth telling? I love the fact that he's so willing to tell these stories, and I'm really excited as well that he wants to buy an Aston Martin. Those are great cars, by the way. Bow, 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 bow. But one of the things that I loved really is the fact that he wants to be a primary vehicle for Jamaicans investing back into the Caribbean, and being a shining example of someone who can do it and someone who can make it. I love the fact again that he's just willing to talk about dealing with disappointment and dealing with the rough times in life, and talking about how his electricity was cut off. Where I was sharing with him after the interview how that was an experience that I had as well. I think it needs to be talked about. It's not all glamour. It's not all Hollywood and glitter. It's not. Trust me, you really have to think about it. If you really want to be a founder entrepreneur, man, you got to be willing to go through the suck. So he's been through all of that. And now he's rising, and he's on a trajectory for greatness. I love this. From music, soccer, being a role model, to hanging out with Sean Paul, now hanging out with Michael Lee Chin, billionaires. I wish him all the best. This was a great conversation. I hope that from those that are out there, you pull some great encouragement from this. Focus on your dreams. Go big. Ask. We spent a lot of time talking about that. Ask, because asking is always free. You never know what they're going to say. They might say no, that's okay. But if they say yes, maybe that'll just change your destiny. So make sure that you find out more information on David Mullings. You can go to vchunting.com/David Mullings for more information and all the field notes on this interview, guys, check him out. And especially if you're Jamaican or you're in the Caribbean and you're interested in investing or in that area, you might want to hang out with him. Check him out. He's a great guy. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you next time.